Hi, everyone. We are letting people join the webinar, so just hang tight for a few seconds as we let more attendees join us in this lovely virtual space. I'm excited to see everybody. If you want to drop, I know chat is actually closed for this group, but if you wanted to drop in the Q&A where you're calling in from, we'd love to say hi to you. All right. Let's go ahead and get started. So hello and welcome everyone to today's webinar. My name is Erica Carroll. I am the Director of Product Marketing and Training here at Mersive, and I am going to be moderating our session together today. But before we begin, I'd like to do a little bit of housekeeping. I'd like to point out, if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A section. We will be answering a few relevant questions during the presentation. And helping to field some of your questions on our call today is our VP of Marketing, Stephen Meyer. He is sitting behind the scenes, and he can wave there to you from our office. So he could also be potentially responding to some of your questions as well. Also, please note that this session is being recorded, and a playback of the recording will be sent out shortly after today's session. Gives us a little bit of time for editing, and we will be posting and distributing that. So today we have joining us Associate Director of Academic Multimedia Services, Harry Ortiz, and Jesus I'm going to butcher your last name.
Yes.
Jesus is the academic multimedia engineer who, and both of them, they had big goals for the university's tech space, and they are here to tell us all about their deployment at Stevens Institute of Technology. So I would like to ask Harry first. Actually, let's get rid of the slides. We want to see everybody's faces. And I would like to ask Harry first, what were the goals that you guys set out with when you first started redoing all of the education spaces? Was it 10 years ago?
6 years ago.
Okay.
So the one thing we wanted to do was kind of bring everything to, be state of the art. We want it functional for our users, something that's easy for them to use, but also something that's easy for us to manage. And, if we can, something that's budget friendly, but also aesthetically pleasing. And just trying to give the classrooms that we inherited more of a modern feel.
Okay. Did you already have some pretty high standards that you were leading with that you had to live up to?
Unfortunately not. So, what we inherited was pretty basic. It was functional, but it wasn't really up to the times. Even 6 years ago, what the times were then. So essentially, Jesus and I started from scratch, and we were given a long leash to kind of go in and play with new things and try new things and see what worked, see what didn't work. And over the course of a couple of years, we kind of decided on certain standards, on certain technology, and then little by little, it kind of came all to fruition.
Okay. Jesus, can you tell me about where you started 6 years ago? Physical equipment costs. That was per semester, I think.
Oh, yes. Our setup was very basic initially. It was just projectors on the room and HDMI connections. That was it. But because we have to accommodate a lot of the users with their laptops, so we're placing adapter rings in every classroom, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, those adapter rings were a high commodity, I guess, because everybody wanted to have a ring of adapters. Now, while we have to accommodate end users, every now and then, some of those rings were either damaged or some of them were missing. And then that had a recurring cost on our budget per semester, sometimes multiple times per semester, because they keep getting damaged or they keep misplacing them. And that's something that after we were talking with Harry and coming down to with new technology with Mersive, we decided that maybe we can step away from placing rings in the rooms and have another solution that we can accommodate better the end user with less cables, right?
Mm-hmm. Less cables, maybe going wirelessly.
Yeah.
Now something about having the connector rings as well. They're not really networked or managed or anything like that. Is that something that you were looking for?
Yeah, so there it is something that it was very intensive as into keeping track of, right? You wouldn't know these rings were missing or they were damaged unless you get a phone call or a ticket request stating that the system wasn't working. And remember, back in the day, we only had the HDMI connection as your only source of presentation. There was nothing else, right? So if the ring was missing or the cable was missing, then a call was placed, and they had to wait for someone from our team to kind of deliver the HDMI cable or the rings. So in order to get the class started. But when we did the transition to Mersive, that became our new standard, right, for wireless presentation. And then the cable became the backup, right? And since we, initially 6 years ago, when we deployed, we started using it with dashboard, Solstice dashboard, now Solstice Cloud. We were able to tell and be proactive, as in like when the rooms were down, if for some reason the pods were offline, we knew that something happened in there. It could have been a lot of things, right? It could have been the network, it could have been the power, and that kind of gave us the heads up that somebody needs to keep an eye on the room and check if everything is functional.
Yeah, that's great. Harry, how did you go about selecting new equipment for this refresh?
So in terms of the wireless presentation, just before Jesus came on board, I was tasked with upgrading like 30 different classrooms. And I was working with a particular vendor who told me, there's this product, Mersive. I had never heard of it at that point. So I said, we could sneak it into one room and we'll try it out, right? And so my boss at the time wasn't really into the idea of wireless presentation for whatever reason. So he, we snuck it into a room and I kind of left it there, forgot it. When Jesus came on board, he really kind of started playing with the features and seeing what it could really do. And once we opened up that can of worms, it was game time. We're like, wow, this is amazing. This is really cool. So we started sneaking it into different projects. And then at some point, the president got a hold of it. And then that's when it caught on like wildfire. We put one in his personal conference room and he loved it. And to the point where he let us watch a World Cup game with him while we were training him with the Mersive. So that was pretty cool. And then he ends the training session with the question, when can I see this in every classroom on campus? And this was like maybe February. And I just blurted out spring break, which was like a month and a half later. So I kind of put us into a box. But once the CIO and the VP at the time heard that the president was so excited about this technology, he pulled the money together and we got it done a month and a half later. And that month and a half later, we had it in about 75 classrooms.
That's awesome. What were some of the advantages of Mersive over some of the other solutions that you were evaluating at the time?
So one of the big things we did try everything under the sun at some point. And one of the biggest advantages was there was almost no lag when playing video. A lot of other manufacturers, they were fine if you were doing like a PowerPoint or showing an Excel sheet or something, but once you play video, they would either crash, it would be choppy, it was just unusable. And Mersive at that time was just far and away the better solution. And their support also separated themselves from other competitors too, because our representatives, Anna and Bert, I don't know if they're on the call, they were amazing from day one. And even still, they're very helpful, very responsive. So in terms of the tech, what really separated it was the support side and the features that come along with it. You know, buying just one piece of hardware, not having to worry about the next generation coming out next year of something, and all you're worrying about is the software updates, and you could test those out. Something doesn't work for you, could always reach out to Mersive and, you know, work with them to see if maybe it's something they're already working on or they didn't know about. But it's like a really good collaboration between us and them.
Mhm.
So that was a big factor in why we went with Mersive and continue to go with them.
That's awesome. You mentioned um, how you can just upgrade the software and not have to, you know, get new hardware if you want new features. Are there any other unexpected upsides of using this solution that maybe you hadn't foreseen when you first decided?
Yeah, so right now we also use Mersive as a way of advertising inside the classroom. So when you
Mm.
turn on one of our systems, Mersive is the first thing you see. So on the top, we have our support number scrolling on the top of the screen. And we have the instructions, but we also have different advertisements on that rotation of pictures. We could even include QR codes so they could get more information. So it kind of gives it a better look for that advertisement. But kind of like a in-room digital signage platform that we didn't really expect. That kind of took off over the past couple of years. Before that, we were just showing campus pictures,
Mhm.
and we would just pull the nicest campus pictures and have those on rotation, and we would walk into rooms and people are just staring at them, watching the pictures go around. And you know, so I think that I didn't see that 6 years ago, that it could be used for more than just wireless presentation and collaboration.
Yeah. Jesus, you mentioned earlier that you started with Solstice Dashboard and you moved to Solstice Cloud. Can you talk a little bit about the analytics and how it maybe informs better decisions for room planning or anything like that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So when we started deploying these Solstice pods, and like Harry said, we started in classrooms, but then eventually we did the transition and we started testing in other spaces because at the very beginning, our Solstice pods were only for faculty and
Mhm.
staff for classroom, right? For teaching purposes. And there was some collaboration in there, but within the classroom, it wasn't really yet. And then we decided to, test some spaces on open spaces where the students are high traffic of students. And then we noticed that those pods were being used more often than the ones in the classroom.
Oh.
And we did notice that they were all using more features too, because in the classroom you have the structure connected and he's presenting.
Mhm.
But on these hollow spaces, open areas, we started noticing that it was not just one student. There were like 4 students connected at the same time, and you could
Mm.
see that they were moving content left and right because of the analytics and metrics that we had, that the amount of data transfer that was happening in between. And that kind of gave us the next step that we need to put this everywhere else, because it's not just for faculty and staff at this point. We're noticing that the students are uh, using it and
Mhm.
they're benefiting out of it. And these metrics also help us to prioritize rooms when it comes to upgrades as well. We
Mhm.
did notice that certain classrooms are used more often than others, right?
Mhm.
And that's part of our metrics as well. And when we are doing refreshes, when we're doing updates, those are the kind of rooms that we are focusing now, because there's a high traffic area.
Mhm.
Um,
Okay. When when you guys decided to expand your fleet, I want to talk about SDS, the Solstice Discovery Service. And obviously, just having one pod in a network, it's really easy to connect and join and no problem. But when you're moving around to different spaces and having to actually, find that pod on a list, can you talk a little bit about how SDS has helped you guys?
yes. So when we initially deployed them, it was original classrooms, right?
Mhm.
But really quick, we're realizing that it's really hard to keep track of all of them. We have a great relation with all the reps from Mersive, Bert, Anna, Roger, very helpful too when it comes out to the technical part. And they help us out to set up the SDS. Originally, set up a new server with the SDS. And once we roll it out, it wasn't just as easier to find on the SDS for end users. It was also when they were scheduled for classes or events or anything, what the end user ended up doing is opening the app and check if the room that they were scheduled is listed in there. And then they will have an idea that, all right, I already have Solstice, I'm set. And they felt a little more comfortable and safe, I guess, that they have this new technology at the time available for them.
Yeah, awesome.
And also you can sort it out by buildings and sizes and maybe not sizes, but definitely buildings and types of rooms. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. So if you are looking for a classroom, then you select classroom, and all your classrooms across campus get listed. Yes.
Yeah, that definitely makes it easier to find those spaces. I'm actually gonna ask Stephen to launch a poll for us, just to get you guys engaged a little bit here, trying to determine some important features. We've talked about some really awesome ones so far today. So when it comes to a Solstice deployment, for you all in the audience, what is most important to you? What are you looking for? We've talked about all of these things except video routing. So we will we'll talk about that in just a moment. But it looks like wireless content sharing, goodness, by far, is the highest application here, the highest feature people are looking for, which is awesome because we do that really, really well. So Stephen, if you want to end that poll, no problems there. Harry, I want to toss it back to you a little bit, talking about cloud. And now, how many pods do you have? Over 100?
I think we're almost at 200 at this point. Yeah.
Okay. How easy is it to keep adding on to your fleet using Solstice Cloud? Do you utilize templates? And
we do. So it seems to be getting easier and easier over the years to deploy them. Because now you can just do it with Solstice Deploy, a couple clicks, and it's on. And yeah, we have different templates. There are some spaces where they want certain layouts, or they want certain things shown, and so it's easy to accommodate. It's just a matter of making a couple templates, couple clicks, and you have exactly what you need.
Yeah, so there's a good question that just came in because you mentioned that you started with dashboard. How difficult was the transition from dashboard to cloud?
It wasn't that much difficult.
Not at all.
I think it got easier because of the templates. Yeah.
I think what was really cool is that they didn't just kill dashboard and then just drop cloud on you. I think for some time we had both running, so it was an easy transition. So you didn't just have something yanked away from you and then you're forced to learn this like right now. So it made for an easier transition to still have both, but slowly move over to cloud.
Okay. There's another feature here that I'd like to talk about. I know you guys were exploring something else, but you do have some emergency messaging on campus. And do you utilize Solstice for that?
So we had initially set up with our previous emergency system. We're currently working right now to integrate it with the new one when we did the migration to a new vendor. But yes, we had it set up for emergency systems. So if there was like emergency broadcasting from either the police or within campus, the students will get their regular alert on their phones and their emails. But it was ingested on Solstice on the top banner. So it will come up in there, as in like just for people to be aware of that there is something going on. It will be part of the scroll. Yes.
Awesome. So I'd like to switch the conversation to active learning, which is our video routing AV over IP feature. How are you guys using that?
Oh, I can answer
You
that.
can go
Either.
ahead.
So we deploy active learning on one of our bigger classrooms because we have multiple displays, and usually since those larger classrooms have mobile furniture, they break out in small groups.
Mhm.
And so they have the capabilities. Each screen has its own Solstice pod. So they have the capability of collaborating within the group in their pod. They toss ideas, they come up with, whatever idea they're working on, and the instructor from the front can actually drag whatever they're working either to the class or to their table where they are, right? If they go to group 4 and they're having some questions, he could easily grab and say, group 1 is working on something, let me show you really quick.
Mhm.
And then he will log on to active learning, drag the image,
Yeah,
and they will see the work that it's happening. Yeah.
very cool. We have another question here, and I encourage the audience to please keep them coming. Are you primarily a Windows campus, Mac, or both?
We are both increasingly more and more Macs. At least that's what it seems like when I have to go into different classrooms. When we first started with Mersive, it was more on the Windows side, but over the years crept over to a good 50-50. And I want to say it's a little more than that now on the Mac side.
Okay.
Yes, I did notice that. Yes, there is some audio extra steps that you have to install for the Macs. Since some of our computers for the end users are kind of locked, Mersive is whitelisted. So if they need to install drivers, that process just happens without the requirement of admin credentials because we whitelisted the software. Yes.
Awesome. So, Mersive isn't the only thing on campus. There's a ton of other peripherals that you guys use to really make these spaces shine. So, aside from Mersive, what other notable equipment helps everything really run smoothly?
So a lot of it we use with Mersive. So for instance, Zoom rooms, we're making a big push on Zoom rooms within the classrooms, and it's already kind of taken off in the conference rooms, but in the classrooms, we can use Zoom rooms and actually pull that Mersive feed and put it in Zoom rooms so you could still wirelessly present over Zoom. Another one we use a lot of with Mersive is the Samsung Flip, or their interactive display, which the president also has in his office with Mersive. So he doesn't want to use the cable, so he can go in present wirelessly on his screen and actually annotate over it, and it's all done through Mersive. So those are the two big ones over the past couple of years. Aside from the one beyond tracking cameras, shore ceiling microphones. This is all for video conferencing. A slew of other projects, but those are the big ones over the past 2 years or so.
Okay. I know that you have some in-ceiling microphones that we've also talked about. Can you tell us how those are implemented in very specific rooms?
So that's all part of our hybrid setup. So right now we're right smack in the middle of a huge project to convert every single classroom to hybrid technology. We're about halfway through, and those microphones are a big piece of it because that's how people will hear in the room.
Yeah.
What's cool about them is that they're powerful enough where I would say in a 60-person classroom, you only need one towards the front to pick up the entire room. And the audio comes through very clearly. There's nothing for the user to do. It's all tied in through the Zoom platform, so there's no settings that they have to change. So it's almost like set it and forget it kind of thing. And they don't even notice the microphone in the room because it looks like a ceiling tile. They just notice a little LED light on the ceiling and they wonder what it is. And then we tell them, oh, that's the microphone. then it blows their mind. So it's a
That's
pretty
awesome.
cool product, easy to deploy, and
Mhm.
I don't think we've ever had to really replace one.
Okay. What about cameras in those hybrid spaces? Do you use video bars or a specific webcam conferencing camera?
So for the classrooms, we are all in on the One Beyond, which is
Mm.
the auto tracker. The Crestron purchased them recently, so I think now they call it the Intelligent camera. So we use that for the classroom cameras. For conference rooms, right now we're all in on the Poly product, so the X50, X52,
Okay.
all tied in with Zoom rooms and Mersive. And so those are two major standards for cameras for classrooms and conference rooms.
Okay. Question came in. Do you use any peripherals connected directly to the pods?
So we have been testing Mersive
Solstice conference?
focus conferencing.
Yeah.
Yes. So we do have, we have some setups where we have connected some devices and peripherals, yes, some microphones and cameras. And
Okay.
unfortunately, we haven't deployed it on campus, campus wide yet. And this is just because this whole Mac, because Apple is just keep releasing, they just release updates too fast for us, I guess. So some spaces we haven't had an issue, especially with a lot of departments that run Windows-based computers, right? And we have some departments from engineering that all of their software runs on PCs, so they don't have a problem with it, and they're on board with it. But we have some certain departments where they're really Mac-based, and that's where it's a little more complicated to kind of support, and it's just because the availability of drivers and how fast Apple is moving forward and releasing support for a lot of the products that need to be connected to their devices.
Yeah, so that actually answered the second question there about the conferencing with Mac, and that is something that we are continually working on, trying to keep up as well. So I'd like to ask a question about your full campus life, students and faculty. Harry, how has this really impacted this, this collaborative environment, the sharing through Solstice? How has it impacted your students and faculty?
So like Jesus mentioned earlier, we started this out with just faculty. And once the students started in the classroom, they're like, hey, we have our own spaces too that we work on, across campus. So once they were able to get access to it, it just became a huge tool for them to kind of break out and collaborate between classes. One of our buildings doubles as an event building, but also a dorm building, has several breakout rooms for students only. And the Solstices, you can see they're constantly used in those breakout spaces for students, all hours of the day, weekends, even during the breaks. And because we could kind of see which rooms are where, we know that those are student spaces. So we could tell like students are really into this. So it really, it's really taken off in a positive way. The students, again, once they were able to kind of get their hands on it, and the younger generation is probably more comfortable with the technology, so we don't really get the request for support from them, but we could tell they're using it actively, again, from dashboard or the metrics that we get, or from cloud, sorry, we get all the metrics, and we can see which spaces are actually being used and when. We know which are being used by students. They may also use the classroom sometimes for like maybe their clubs or different events, but we know definitely which are student spaces, and that's you could see the impact just through those metrics of how it's been helpful for them.
Awesome. Well, we're coming to the half hour here. I appreciate both of your time for this webinar. If there's one more question. Let's see. I've noticed delays and lag in video and audio when wirelessly presenting and using Solstice Conference. What have you noticed, and is it being addressed? Honestly, that kind of sounds like a support question to me. Because I don't know if you guys want to talk about if you've noticed any lag, that would be great. But it could also be a network congestion issue.
So we did notice that, but it's all network based, right?
Sure.
High traffic hours, like around maybe 1 or 2 o'clock, where everyone is on campus and everyone is using the network. We do notice that there is a very slight, but this is all network based. There is a slight delay, but this doesn't last all day. It's just a very specific hour if everyone is using it at the same time, and it's just the nature of the network, right? And it happens at home too. If there are certain hours that it just slows down just a little bit, but hardly noticeable, at least on campus. Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, again, thank you both for joining us today. Thank you, Stephen, for fielding the questions. And thank you, everybody in the audience, for joining us today. Again, in the chat, if you would like to reach out to any of us on LinkedIn, please feel free to do that. Stephen, I'm gonna ask you to throw a poll one more up as we're leaving here. If you would like somebody from Mersive to reach out to you, if you want a demo, we'd love to talk to you. And if you asked a question, I think we got to all of them, but as always, if you asked a question and we didn't get to you, feel free to either reach out to us if you don't hear back, but you should get a response via email from us. So again, thank you all, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks.
Thank you.